Thing is, all right.
And we are live.
Hey.
So
What's
good
up?
evening, gentlemen. Good evening. How was your
Good
guys'
evening
day
to
so
you
far?
as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm off
So how did your interview go, Sean? Have you guys met? Do you guys know each other, Sean, Alex?
No, I haven't met Sean. I just got a second that I could go over there and look at his page, but then we got started and I didn't really get much of a chance to.
So Sean is from California. When he gets done jeffing off, I'll let him.
All right, there we go.
But Sean's from California. He well, go ahead, Sean. Let him know who you are.
Yeah, my name's Sean Dustin. I'm from California. I host a podcast called Nowhere to Go But Up. Formerly incarcerated, knucklehead, drug addict, all around. Used to be not a good person and changed all that, and now I'm just trying to help people.
Word to that, man. That's sums I think all three of us probably up in a quick couple of words there. That was where I was too. Hadn't been out too long, but while I was in there, I went through RDAP, and I became part of the reentry committee in there. We were all required to be part of a committee. So I signed up for the reentry committee because, I was one of the guys who was actually able to do things in the world pretty effectively, but just chose not to. So got into the reentry committee, man, and just really found a passion for helping people. Ended up becoming one of the mentors for RDAP and stayed after and helped a bunch of guys do a lot of good things. So brought that passion out from behind the fence with me, and trying to do the work now out here where I got more resources to do it with. So
That's
good
awesome.
to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too. I didn't have enough time to even qualify for RDAP. So like right. I only had like 18 months. So like when I got there, I got comfortable. And by the time I got comfortable and got a routine together, it was our time to go again.
Right. Well, so. I didn't get the year off or anything. Funny quick story of how I wound up in RDAP, man, was I was at FCI Beckley in West Virginia, and I got my points down low enough to go to a low, and they said, okay, well, we're going to send you to Louisiana. And I was like, Louisiana? And I've got a daughter that she was about 4 hours from where I was in West Virginia. And my mom looked it up, and she's like, Alex, that's 700 miles from where we are. We won't be able to bring her to come and see you. So the guy who was running RDAP, he had almost as much power as the warden did at the FCI. So I went and talked to him, and he's like, yeah, we'll get you into RDAP over here. So the day that I got moved over to RDAP, I was actually on the move sheet to go over to RDAP, and I was on the A&O call out to go pack out to go to Louisiana. And he had to call and get all that canceled and stuff. So I wound up in RDAP, but how I got there, I don't think really matters. It was the point that's really where I found my passion to get out, and pieces started coming together for me to do better for myself and then help others do better once I got out. So
that's awesome, man.
Now, Alex, was that Yazoo City?
To where I was gonna go, or where I was at?
And where you said Louisiana, and isn't Yazoo?
No, it was Oakdale.
Okay.
Yeah, Yazoo's
I heard Oakdale was
okay.
Right. Okay, Mississippi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yazoo's in Mississippi. Oakdale. I heard it was okay, and I wouldn't have minded. But at the time, I had like a year and a half left on my bid, and that would have been like a year and a half. I didn't get to see my little girl, so
yeah,
I wasn't really going for that. And I had my issues before I came to prison and stuff anyway, so RDAP wasn't a bad deal for me. I was 45 years old when I got locked up, and when I did, I was like, okay, well, all right, it's time to get your shit together. You done been a knucklehead for 45 years, so you know what you need to do. You just need to start doing it.
Yeah.
So RDAP for me wasn't a bad move, and it wasn't a tough decision either. I was like, all right, let me go do this. Yeah.
So Sean had a question. What were you gonna ask him, Sean?
No, I was gonna say, how long have you been out?
About 9 months. Actually,
Yeah.
9 months, a couple days ago. Yeah.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you. How about yourself?
Well,
I got out in 2006.
Oh, okay.
Did a couple violations and didn't get off the meth. Didn't get off the meth until 2010, and then slipped into a 7-year opiate addiction. And but I was still able to function on that, so I was still able to keep leveling up and doing the things that I was doing. And it wasn't until I started my podcast, so actually about 6 months before I started the podcast, that I'm like, if you're going to be talking to people about the things you want to talk to people about, you need to stop doing this, because how are you know what I mean? How are you going to tell anybody anything while you're sitting there popping pills and selling pills and you know what I mean, doing all that behavior still? And
yeah,
so
it's
that
hard
was
to be authentic like that.
yeah. And so that was kind of the beginning of that. And then I used edible marijuana to transition off of the pills and kind of lessen the withdrawals from it.
so what do you guys want to really discuss as far as some of the emotions that we go through? Do you want to discuss, like, as far as when we first went in, or how we're dealing with life now as a transition?
Well,
what do you think is more relevant?
I don't know. I mean, because if I'm talking about myself, I mean, none of the issues that I was dealing with prior to incarceration were even dealt with while I was in incarceration, right? Because I didn't get any programming. I didn't get anything. All I got was some yard time and a better body. And when I left, I was still the same toxic person that I was when I came in. It just expressed itself differently, And
well, for me, my interest is always in where the transition occurred. That's where my interest is at, and each person that I speak to that has went through some challenging stages in their life, because there's so many people out there going through challenging stages in their lives. And like Alex's transition and Sean's transition may have been two completely different transitions.
Absolutely.
And what Alex went through may be able to help somebody, and what Sean went through may be able to help. So that's always where my interest is at. But I really want this program to be as fruitful as possible, because an hour goes quick. And so, I don't want to get lost in anything too much. I want to try to be as diverse as possible with emotions that everybody can kind of relate to. So I guess let me start off real quick. So
sure.
For me, the biggest thing that I deal with, I'm just going to go with today, right? I've been out 4 years. When I came home, I thought I was prepared. I thought, I had the world by the balls. And I quickly found out that, I was prepared for prison, but I wasn't prepared for life, and it took me by surprise, and it knocked me off, and it shook my confidence. It made me insecure, and it kind of put me back in the same spot as to where I was feeling before I went in, which I guess now is a good thing that I reflect on that, because I had a chance to fall back into crime, and I just, it's not there for me. The desire to do bad at all is just not there, and now I'm just dealing with the anxiety. The biggest thing I deal with is anxiety. I barely get any sleep. I'm very edgy at times. It interferes with my relationship. I'm nervous, and just anxious. So these are some of the things that I deal with now, every day. And that's pretty much it. I mean, depression for me, I've never had an issue with depression. I do have an issue with anger, but that kind of spawns from the anxiety. I don't like it when I start getting anxious. I get very wound up. I become very tight. I become very edgy, and I kind of get very reclusive. And it's very hard on a relationship. If the woman, didn't love me the way that she did, she wouldn't be here because of my actions, So that's it for me. That's kind of what I deal with on a daily basis for me.
I can see that. Well, and it makes a lot of sense that you talk about um, some of the things that cause you to, get angry about stuff. Because I think that it seems like I read it somewhere, but it makes perfect sense to me that, anger comes from fear um, in most cases. Just talking about straight up emotional stuff and emotions, you know, anger usually comes from frustration and fear, not knowing how to handle situations and not knowing how to deal with the situation that you're in. And so that makes a lot of sense that you feel that. Did you have, just out of curiosity, if you don't want to say it, that's fine.
No, no. I mean, we're all here to share.
I don't know that much about your history. You and I have just recently gotten really connected with each other. But did you have an addiction problem in the past?
No, that's one thing
No.
about me is as I did not have an addiction problem. I was the pusher.
Okay.
I was the other guy.
Okay. I was just curious about that because
I have addictions. I mean, because I don't want to. We all have addictions of some sort,
yeah.
And I've had, my addiction was ego. That's what my addiction was. I mean, that to me, ego came before anything.
Yeah.
I came before everything. So, and I still battle that now today.
It's a tough one a tough one to do in the competitive world that we live in. Where everybody's watch out for themselves, and you don't have a lot of people that really looking out for each other. So now I was just curious about that. Um, with my range of emotions, I mean, I've gone through a lot, dude, and I was my drug of choice, or whatever you want to call it, was alcohol. I was a drinker. I was never running in the street shooting heroin or smoking crack, holed up in a hotel. I was never any of that. I stayed home and drank, to the point where I couldn't function in life. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't do any of those things. And I think on a subconscious level, I was like, all right, you got to do something drastic in your life. I had a 4-year-old daughter when I went to prison, and I was very close to her and loved her very dearly, but I couldn't be a good dad because I was drunk all the time. But that didn't keep me from being involved in her life. And I was like, okay, you're going to have to do something drastic in your life to change the course that you're on. And I think there was a subconscious part of me that was like, God, you have to go hit a lick. And I was in for robbing banks. So I went out and did that and caught my bid and went in and was like, all right, time to get your shit together. So, part of my whole journey with figuring out how to get myself together was really taking a hard look at myself and working on dealing with the emotions that I felt. I had a lot of anger issues as well. And looking back on them now, I can say without any doubt that they came from frustration at me not being able to cope with the way the world was. I wanted to change the way the world was. I wanted to make it suit me rather than me suiting it. And we all know that shit don't work.
Don't work, buddy.
So the thing that I learned from it, for me personally, was that, the mind works like a muscle. You have to condition it and work on it and do that on a pretty consistent basis for you to get the kind of results that you want. So I literally had to start monitoring what I was thinking, or at least being mindful of what I was thinking, and trying to catch myself when I started spinning off into an anger thing or just being negative and pissy about something, and it's kind of hard at first and you don't do it all the time, but if you start doing it eventually a little bit here and there, it's like, okay, yeah, this isn't doing you any good to be mad about this. It's like drinking poison to kill somebody else. So you start catching yourself doing that, and you got to stay at it. But if you stay at it, you'll start catching yourself doing that more and more. And what I found was that eventually I was able to turn myself into a pretty positive person. So the emotions that I deal with today are coming after, probably 3 years of me working on changing my thought patterns and where I'm at now. The life that I have now is freaking amazing, dude. I mean, I'm so much more of a happy person since I got out. The 9 months that I've been out, I have accomplished a great deal. I just landed a job that I love. And so the emotions that I deal with right now are great. But I did have to overcome a lot of the kind of things that you're talking about and it's not easy, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Sean.
For myself, it was anger was the main thing that I dealt with, and manipulation. And also, like I said, in 2010, I stopped the meth and I started on this trajectory going upwards. And what I realized is that, I took the substances away, and even taking the pills, that kind of helped, but the anger was still there. It wasn't doing its job as far as like stuffing those emotions down and numbing them like meth did. Right. Because when I was in meth, I was smoking meth and out there doing that. I checked out everything. I didn't feel anything. And, it just started spilling out everywhere, I'd be playing softball and all of a sudden somebody would set me off. And now I'm trying to fight the whole team, right, that I'm playing against. And I'm doing
that guy.
Oh, yeah. And now I'm doing this in front of everybody. And it's like, like, what does that look like? I was the guy that was always constantly having to apologize tomorrow for the shit I did today. And, who knew when it was going to be? Who knew when I was going to blow up? I was a toxic person in all my relationships. I was mentally, emotionally, and verbally abusive to the women that I was with. A lot of that had to do with me projecting my own hatred towards myself onto them. That didn't stop until, I would say probably until 2 years ago, when I really, really started taking a look at who I was. And then my daughter, I have a daughter too. She's almost 4. She was witnessing this at a certain point, right? When she was 2 years old, she, I was in a rage and I was yelling at my ex and arguing and all this stuff. She was behind me. And then I looked back and she was gone. It snapped me out of whatever I was going through. And I went to go look for her, like, oh, where'd she go? And she was in the furthest part of the house, hiding and crying and cowering. And that was like, it snapped me out of it. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, I wonder if that was me when my parents were fighting. And so it really got me to look at the cycle. I'm like, here I am just recreating that whole traumatic thing all over again to the next generation. And so one more time it happened, and we were in the car. I'd already left the relationship after that, because I was like, right, well, this is not going to continue to happen, because all I'm doing is setting her up to fail in the future when she comes across a person like me and realizes, that she's being abused emotionally and mentally and all this stuff, but she doesn't leave because, well, that's what my parents used to do. That's normal. Right. And it's not normal. No. A loving relationship doesn't look anything like that. Of course you're going to argue with your significant other. Of course you're not always going to get along. But to go to the degree that I would, and just be that toxic person, everywhere that I went, in my job, in my, my life, and that's just how I was showing up. And I literally had to, a lot of this happened. A lot of the change started when I started listening to podcasts. And I was listening to Joe Rogan for probably 3 years before I started my own. And then I started following Jordan Peterson. And then I started following Sam Harris. And I started following Lex Friedman. All of these intellectual people. And I had them in my ears for like 10 to 14 hours a day, while I'm working. Yeah. And so it was the weirdest thing, because it was like, without me even realizing it, my mindset started shifting and going this way and thinking like them, and the things that they would say would play in my head. And I started wanting to be a better person. I started wanting to be somebody that like wasn't like that. And it really wasn't until I started coming out in my podcast and talking about being an abusive person that it stopped having the power over me. Because once I pulled it out of the closet and said, hey, this is it. This is who I was, man. I can't hide it anymore. This is the abusive person that I showed up as. And I'm not bragging about it. I'm ashamed of it. But the thing that people don't realize is that living in shame, pain, and fear festers and manifests it everywhere when you don't talk about it.
It multiplies itself inside you because it sits there and you can feel it, but you can't really do anything about it. So it just sits there and grows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it just, once I started bringing it out and once I brought it to light and, took it out of the darkness, and then it just started going away slowly but surely. It's not gone by any stretch of the imagination, like I'd say about 2 months ago, or maybe not even that, maybe about a month and a half. I was driving, or I was leaving where I was living, pulled out, didn't see a car coming. And I didn't think that I cut him off really, but apparently he thought I did. And so he started riding my ass, and I could feel my teeth starting to grit. I could feel my hands on the steering wheel gripping tighter. My heart started beating. My breathing started becoming rapid. And when he went to go around me, I went and tried to cut him off, just like that, like in a split second. Like I didn't even have time to think about it. That's just what happened. And I cut him off. And he started riding my ass again. I slammed on the brakes, and he almost hit me. And then I moved up again, and I pulled over when I got over because I wanted to fight this dude, right? Luckily, he kept going. But once I had a moment to just sit there, and I'm like, God, man, I thought you were gone, Here I'm doing so well, man. I feel like I had this thing under control, and I'm talking about it, and it's like, bam, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But what I did is I took like lessons from what I've learned. So let's dissect this. Let's reverse engineer this whole thing. All right. I'm sitting there on the side of the road going, okay, what are you going through? What are those triggers that I just told you were happening? So now I know when that starts to happen again, okay, I know what's going on. Here it is. Here he is. He's back, Yeah. And
you did that after the moment?
Yeah.
Like as soon as it happened, you stopped and self-analyzed.
When I pulled over and he kept going, I was like, all right, caught my breath.
What just happened? Right.
Yeah. Like, how did it just go from that to that so fast? I mean, it was a matter of 2 minutes. Right. And what I'd realized was, I was dealing with something that I wasn't talking to anybody about. I was having to, work. I'm having to go back to work. I've been on temporary disability for a year. That's running out. I don't want to go back to the job that I don't like. There's all of these emotions around that. I'm trying to pivot into doing something. I've been doing it for a year, trying my hardest to like turn that corner and turn this podcast into something that I can monetize. And it wasn't working out. It just, it just wasn't time yet. Right. And so there's all these things that are just boiling up inside of me that I can't control. And instead of talking about it, because when we talk about it, it's like that pressure release.
Yes. Sure. It's exactly
what I mean. And I didn't do that. And so that's where that came from. Right. And it's that fear, the fear of having to go back to doing the thing that I don't like, which is going to keep me from doing the thing that I love.
Right.
You guys, man, you guys brought up a lot of great points, man. And look at the diversity that we got. I mean, Alex's issue was alcohol, and Sean's issue, was what was the drugs? I mean, what got you into the meth to begin with, Sean, quickly?
It was just, I don't know. My friends were doing it and they wouldn't let me do it. And so I figured out I'm going to find a way to get it. And I did, and fell in love with it, and, had an 18-year relationship with it off and on. But I was selling drugs too, cause I was a part of what you were doing.
Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
I don't know. The doing the drugs came first, and then finding a way to supply myself.
To support the habit. Okay. So This is what I'm trying to find out. So, because I've seen it both ways. Again, I'm on the other side of the road. So I've seen where guys will start hustling, and they'll toot some cocaine to keep them hustling all night. They'll run out of coke. Next thing you know, they're smoking it, and then 2 weeks later, they're gone. So this is why I always ask, like, what was the catalyst? So is it fair to say, Sean, that at that time in your life you were a follower behind your friends and you just wanted to keep up with them and you felt like you were being left behind?
Yeah, I wanted to, because they would go into, like, we'd all be hanging out and then they'd disappear into a room, lock the door, and like I'd be like, "Hey, what are you doing? No, go away." And so they wouldn't let me in, and I was asking one of my other friends, I'm like, "What are they all doing in there?" And he's like, "Oh, they're doing this." And so, I found a way to get it, and then I tried it. And, I've always been somewhat of a leader my whole life, but the problem was I would lead people in the wrong direction. The manipulation would come out. You know what I mean? And so
it'll make you feel good. I'm sorry. I mean, try this. It'll make you feel good. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Even when I was, doing drugs and supporting my own habit, I would have the guys that were slamming dope doing crime for me. Right. And I would be paying them in meth to go and do smash and grabs and to do, not home invasions, but like burglaries and stuff like that. And I'd give them the vehicle to go do it. And so, that's kind of like what I was doing. I mean, I was still sort of running stuff, but I always would hang out with people that were just below me. Like I had just a little bit more than they did. You know what I mean? So I was like the king of the dipshits.
Yeah. See, and I guess my issue is I was just, so you brought up a good point. And before I get into really what that was, what my issue was I want to explain to you, Sean, what it is as a kid to watch his father fight the softball team and all that, because that was me. My father was an alcoholic, and my father had a very, very bad temper, and my father was a brawler. So you couldn't say anything to him. You couldn't even look at him, because once he got past so many drinks, next thing I knew, he would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Son, that guy's over there looking at me, and I don't like how he's looking at me." And I would tell him, I'm like 9 years old, right? "Dad, he's not looking at you, man," And he would go over there and end up fighting the guy. So I'm at a baseball game, right? I play baseball, and I didn't know how good I was until I got inside into prison. And I really got into my own, and I just started to realize my athletic talent that I had. But I played baseball since I was 5 years old. My father made sure I played every year. The last year I played, I was 8 years old, and we were at this game. It was a night game, and my father was slap drunk in the stands, right? Stands are full. And I'm nervous in the game because my father's drunk. I can't even concentrate on the game because I'm worried about my father fighting somebody in the stands, blah, blah, blah. I'm just embarrassed, really, And sure enough, I miss a ball. It's a divisional playoff game, for the little league. Coach takes me out, puts me on the bench. And what the hell do you think happened? And my father got up off them bleachers and went during the game. This is the middle of the game. Went around into the baseball field, grabbed the coach. The coach is trying to get away from my father's chasing him, trying to grab him, swing at him, kick him, all kinds of stuff. And I'm just sitting over there like on the bench with my head down. Man, listen, I got teased in school. My father would still make me go because he paid for the baseball thing. So now he still makes me go I still have to finish the season, because he paid for it. So now I'm at the practice now with the coach. It was a hard time for me, man. And I didn't know how to deal with those things as a kid. And I kept everything internal because everything was just chaotic around me. And what I hear you guys say, right, is a lot of what my lifestyle was. And that's just emotional decisions. emotional decisions. I had an incident like what you're talking about, Sean, where I'm on the phone with my wife. I'm going to get Dunkin' Donuts, 7:30 in the morning. I'm going to get her coffee, right? Now everybody's in a rush to go to work. I understand. It's a 2-lane highway. I wasn't in a rush that morning, and I'm on the phone with her. So the guy that was behind me was in a rush, right? So when I go to make a left, I get in the left-hand turn to go into Dunkin' Donuts. This dude whips around me and pulls in front of me and jumps out of the car in the turning lane. I'm on the phone with her. I'm like, oh, baby, I gotta call you back. This dude's getting out of the car. So I jump out of the car now, and is a little Spanish guy. And when he sees me, because he's running up on the car, I'm not going to sit in the car. I got to get out. So when I jump out and he sees me, he stops.
I wonder why.
So he stops, and I tell him, I said, man, listen to me. I said, don't you ever get out of your car on nobody, man. I said, what the hell is wrong with you, man? I said, over a turning signal, So he's like, man, I'm just, you were going so slow and I'm just late. I'm like, that's not my problem, partner. You can't get out of the car and run up on my car like that. What the hell is wrong with you? So I told him, I said, man, go get back in your car and just relax, But it was just that fast. I'm in a whole different plane of existence. I'm getting my baby some coffee. We're talking about what we're going to do for the day. And just that fast, things can catapult. So in those situations, how do we make sure, because none of us can get in no trouble like that, right? They'll throw the key away at us. So how do we make sure that when those situations arise, how do we make sure that we're in control at all times?
The simple answer is practice. Mm-hmm. Truly. I tried to come up with some stuff while we were in RDAP, because part of that was giving lectures and, being able to hold a seminar. And, man, I tried to come up with acronyms. I tried to come up with something, and I still strive for it and want to someday, but there is no, my thing was flash a stop sign up in your face and try to come up with an acronym for stop. Picturing my baby girl, my daughter in my face when I try to get into a situation like that. But really the only thing is to practice, to start to learn how to work your brain instead of having your brain work you. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it comes down to. Because a line that I read in a book one time, it was a Stephen King book, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan. But there was a girl that lost her temper as a teenager and trashed her room. And her dad went up and told her, he said, if you don't learn to control your emotions will control you. And that was one of the most profound things that I'd read, because I was one of those people that my emotions completely and entirely controlled me. And still to this day, my face shows my emotions in a big way. I've had people tell me, oh, you souring up at that. What's going on? And I'm like, sorry, I wear my shit on my face. I can't help it. But through time and work, I've been able to just get a hold of it a little bit better. And it's really the point. There's a point that you're talking about. And I think you both know what I'm talking about. It doesn't gradually, you don't gradually get mad. Not usually. Mm-mm. You go from 0 to 60 in like 0.5 seconds. Instantly, something hits you wrong. Somebody comes at you sideways, whatever it might be. Shit hits you and you're like, oh, fuck that.
Right.
So only through, like I'm talking about, just being able to monitor yourself and keep yourself in check. And it starts with the little things like I was talking about before, being able to, you see yourself spinning down this hole of negativity and, oh, now my day's going to suck because this happened. This one little thing that happened, like you went to brush your teeth and you was out of toothpaste. Something like that was the kind of thing that would trigger me to just go down this little spiral hole. Well, you start working on controlling that, and then you get a better handle on your emotions as well.
Well, so can you give just a couple examples of, like, when you say practice, what is somebody to do when you say practice? Like, can you give some examples of maybe something where somebody can just but just stop, something that we do every day where we just lose our emotions over, that if we just took a second and just say, you know what, why
Well, you start with the little things, really. I mean, and yeah, I can give you some examples. Okay, like one of the biggest thing, and if you go look at my Facebook page, this is my little tagline on there. It says that 10% of your life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can take any situation and spin it the way that you want to spin it in your head to make it work for you. Even if something is would normally be construed as negative, you can take that as a learning lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I screwed this up, but if I learn from it, it's not necessarily a mistake. So it really starts with a change of the way you perceive things. So like something little that happens, all right, like somebody cuts you off in traffic. You can get upset about that, and you can get mad about it, and you can throw on some Disturbed Metallica and feed that, which is what I would have done back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say, you know what, that person has got some issues going on. They're really in a hurry. Is this worth me getting upset and ruining my day over? And then just, stopping yourself before it gets to that point. And you start with the little things, because the little things aren't going to be the things that take you from 0 to 60 in half a second. You know what I'm saying? Like the example I used earlier, like going to brush your teeth and you're out of toothpaste.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
Going to get some orange juice out of the fridge and somebody let that little swallow in the bottom.
Mm.
Little things like that.
That's me, man. I do that.
You're that guy.
I do that.
You're that
I'm
guy,
that guy,
man.
That's the guy
You're
I
that
am.
Fucking guy.
We're gonna find out who you are, but that's the guy I am. I leave the little swallow in the bottom, and it drives people nuts. So what do you guys, Sean? Because I saw you raise your hand a minute ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of the things that we're talking about, these are all subconscious level stuff, right? These are auto responses that have been learned over long periods of time. And this is how we normally respond to it. For me, it was anger, and that's how I responded to it. Lying was another one. I would lie for the dumbest shit and, just for no reason. And when I would stop and think about it, like, why'd you just lie about that? Now you just made things even worse for yourself, because now you're going to have to, nothing that you're going to say around this is going to make any sense, or it just gets even worse. And so, but these were things that were ingrained in my subconscious as to my operating system, right? We talk about being flashed into the operating system. And so for me, it was, and to go along with what you were saying, it's and how you respond. I stopped reacting emotionally and I started responding intelligently. And when I stopped reacting, things got a lot better. I mean, they didn't get perfect, but it kept things in the forefront of what I was dealing with. And as long as it's in front, I can see it and I can step back from it as I'm dealing with it. There was one thing that I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was, man. It just went as I was sitting there thinking about something else. But I mean, really, it comes down to changing that behavior by replacing it with a new behavior. And like what Alex was saying is that you have to keep trying. It's like it's almost like a kid. Like when your kid falls down and gets up and falls down and gets up and falls down and gets up. At some point, as long as he keeps trying to get up, he's going to get up, and it's going to work. How many times did it take me to stop trying to do drugs and do better? It took a hell of a long time. It took almost 18 years.
Right.
But
damn.
when I, well, even longer than that, but I mean, when I finally got serious about it, the time in between the failures were further and further and further and further apart. And so now when I fail forward because I learned from my mistakes. And like I did with the incident, I stopped and I'm like, okay, what's going on? You got to have self-talks I have to have self-talks with myself all the time. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just close myself in a room and just like, dude, what's going on, man? Why are you trying to pick a fight with your girlfriend for no reason? She isn't doing shit. She isn't doing shit. You're just going out there you're trying to gaslight her. You know what I mean? For no reason. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And it's awareness, self-awareness is the key to all of this. once you become self-aware, you literally have no choice but to do better.
Well, do you think that we're always self-aware, or and like, okay, so for me, like I always knew what I was doing. I just didn't care, or like I always knew that I was supposed to do the right thing or whatever, but I was just so egotistical and narcissistic at that time that I just didn't care. So, do you think we're aware that we're being a dick? Like your example was a perfect example, because how many times do we go and pick fights with our spouses because we're just you got our panties in a bunch about something? You know what I mean? So you bring up such a great point. So how often are we really aware that we're that way, and we're just lying to ourselves and blaming her for putting the pickle jar upside down or whatever some stupid reason is, you know? Yeah. So are we really being honest with ourselves?
Well, I think a lot of that comes back to communication and being able to communicate with your, like me being able to communicate with my girlfriend about how I'm really feeling, or what it is. Like for me, manipulation is a huge thing, and I've constantly got to make sure that I'm doing things for the right reason and it's not self-serving, because my ego wants to serve itself constantly. I want to be the king podcaster. I want to be Joe Rogan. I want to be all these things, but I can't be any of those things until I'm putting other people first, and then maybe that'll happen later, but for me, I mean, it's a constant struggle, man. I don't know any other way to say it. It's exhausting sometimes. It
is. It's very exhausting. And as we talked about earlier, with the ADD compiled on top of that, it's triple exhausting for me, because I can only focus on things in short bursts, right? But how I've learned to deal with my anger, I have found through self-awareness, is that I bottle shit. And it could be just little shit that I know bothers me, but I don't like to address it at that point, because I don't like negativity, and I don't even want to address it. But I'm finding that it's being stored somewhere in the back as a little itch. You know what I mean? And as these little itches grow, and then one day, yeah, I just blow up over the stupidest shit, and through that self-awareness, that's when I started saying, like, okay, I'm stockpiling little negativities, and it's growing into a big negative ball. So I have to start checking that as soon as it starts coming in. Don't sit on it, just address it, or deal with it, or find a way that pacifies your mind. And by doing that, I have found that it's been much, much easier for me to control my anger and just pacify myself.
Sorry,
where'd you go?
Blank
Where'd
for a second.
Where'd you go, Thomas?
You disappeared a minute ago for a minute. We could still hear you. I think we can still hear you, Thomas.
Check one. Mike, check one. No, so I mean, he makes a good point too. And I was talking to my girlfriend earlier. Yeah.